Do you think it really matters what they call it? What I'm talking about, of course, is critical race theory. And I've had so many people asking me for lexicons, glossaries, um, you know, definitions of terms, how they refer to things. What is critical race theory really? People are telling me it's not really critical race theory, or they're not doing critical race theory in the school, and I don't know what to do, and help me find the critical race theory. Guys, there's two things I want you to get out of this video. The first is you need to get in touch with your values in a big hurry. You need to define your moral framework in a big hurry. You need to decide what are the values and morals and worldview you want your children to learn and you want passed on to them to carry forward, to defend, to propagate, to preserve for their children. And you need to be real solid on that. You need to be solid on that. And the second thing I want you to take away from this is it doesn't matter what they call it. It only matters what they teach. So I don't care if they're calling it some other newfangled term they invented 5 minutes ago and not critical race theory by name. I don't care if they use one person's book over another person's book, or this name over that name, or this scholar over that scholar, or this TED Talk over that TED Talk. It doesn't matter. The specific materials or company or, labels are irrelevant. By any other name, all that matters are the morals and the values that are finding their way into the classroom and the behaviors towards your children when they encounter them, when your children encounter these morals, values, worldview, and behaviors. What's happening to your kids? Last night, I became aware of a video conversation that originally occurred on Instagram, was then shared over on YouTube by a history teacher out in LA by the name of Will Roche. He recorded it and shared it because he wanted people to see what a typical conversation with proponents of critical race theory sounds like. And he let himself sit there in this hot seat for about 2 hours. It was painful to watch, I'll be honest with you, but I still encourage you to go watch it because you need to know. You need to be able to feel it to your bones what your kids are probably going through in their classrooms, or are going to, certainly, if the Biden administration has their way and gets the Civic Secures Democracy Act through and gets $1 billion of funding into their coffer from Congress to distribute out to schools that are going to be pushing these ideas, these values, this worldview to your children. You need to know. You need to really internalize what that stuff is. And then you have to make a decision. Like I said, does this align with what I believe and what I want my kids to believe, or doesn't it? And I'm going to just share with you a little tiny tidbit. Later on today, you can watch a live stream I'm doing with Carlin Borsenko where we're going to go through and react to it a little bit more, like a happy hour reaction like she usually does. But I got one little clip and I shared it out last night when I couldn't sleep. I literally didn't sleep. I don't think I got an hour's worth of sleep because these ideas were rattling around in my mind, and I was so frustrated with my inability, it seems, to make clear to my audience that the name of this thing kind of doesn't matter. Even I only call it critical race theory because that's the colloquial term that I know you guys at this point are going to, recognize and come and watch the video. If I called it, anti-reason, anti-reality, anti-American, Marxian, Maoist cultural revolution, I'm not sure you would be as dialed into that, or you might even think I'm a hyperbolic crazy person. So I'd rather you hear it from the horse's mouth what the ideas are, and then you form your own conclusions about what it analogizes to, what period of history, what value system by name, whatever. I mean, I don't care. I really don't care. I just care that these ideas not come into the schools as truth. I personally think they're a faith-based set of ideas, not grounded in science or reality. Certainly not social science. And I think that's all you need to care about. Tim Pool saw my little clip and he said the mistake conservatives and anti-woke people often make is assuming that these people share a moral framework with you. They don't. The woke believe one thing: there is no truth but power. 100% correct. You will hear when you watch this 2-hour conversation constant references to power and equating truth to it. That's all you need to do. It didn't matter what Will offered up in terms of challenges or questions. Every question he asked was evidence of him trying to cling to power, his fragility. There were contradictions galore. He was told not to do something that they turned around 5 seconds later and did. Don't hide behind books and titles and names and academic authorities. And then in the next breath, you haven't read the correct authorities. You haven't read the correct books. You haven't read the correct titles. When you have, then maybe you'll know what I know. But even then, if you're still questioning it, that's evidence of your fragility. The Kafka trap. Everything you say to challenge me is proof of me being right. That's not how discourse works. That's not how discussions work. These people would wither, as somebody points out down here. These aren't even real thoughts. She's parroting talking points she's been fed by her cult. All these people would wither under Socratic method, but they're trained to avoid debate. How cults, religions endure. 100% correct as well. This wasn't intended to be a debate. It was intended to be a conversation. He went into it, I do believe, in good faith to better understand, in case he was misunderstanding something, in case the change in name from one person to another also meant a change of ideas. In case people in the schools were presenting ideas as critical race theory that had absolutely no basis, in fact, where critical race theory is concerned. But all they did was confirm that the ideas being presented in the classroom are, in fact, critical race theory ideas. And just because they're using a different set of books or a different author was suggested for people to read, it doesn't change the core facts. Now, what is one of those ideas? Well, as I said here, these people want to teach your kids history, so listen carefully.
Our Constitution was built on those founding principles, but was not built on those founding principles, including the humanization of marginalized folks. So you cannot cite our Constitution. Our Constitution should be burned because
our Constitution should be burned. Does that align with your morals? Now, I said, go watch this video for yourself. See that comment in context. Don't take my word for it. I don't want you to. I am actively telling you, anyone who's watching who's a big fan of theirs, I am telling my audience to go watch the conversation in its entirety. Go watch it on the original Instagram. If you don't feel comfortable watching it on Will's YouTube, do whatever you got to do. Avail yourself of all the information. Listen to everything they say and then ask yourself, did they present facts or did they present opinions? Did they present evidence that they are correct and he is wrong? Did they allow him to share his concerns, voice his questions with a complete sentence before being interrupted? Were they open to disagreement and just letting it sit there? Or were there multiple threats that Weeze, in particular, the lady in the cap, was going to have a conversation with advocates for CRT in schools? Alfred Chivy Brooks, Dr. Kate Slater, and Louisa Weeze Duran were on the side of critical race theory is important for K-12, and Will was unsure, leaning towards it not being not ideal. While one could say that very little was accomplished or that this wasn't productive, this is a rare and very clear example of what CRT looks like in practice, conversation, the classroom, etc. So, no, it wasn't productive. I don't believe they came away understanding him at all, but I don't think they went into it with any intention of understanding him. I don't think he came out of it having been persuaded that they were right. And I do actually believe that he went in there open-minded enough that if they presented something to show him that he was wrong, he would have considered it. But I don't think they changed his mind one bit. I don't think they acquitted themselves well as proponents of their beliefs. They appeared bullying. They talked over him. They silenced him repeatedly based solely on the color of his skin, his status as a cis white het male, which they labeled him. He did not. So I want you to watch it for all the context of the words, but also their behaviors, their tone, the way they entertain questions about nuance and disagreement, because he says K-12 needs to be a place where curiosity is encouraged and supported, and that includes issues over clarity of language, specific complexities and nuance, personal experiences, etc. And he even goes so far as to say that if you agree with her, if you believe Dr. Kate showcased thinking and ideas you want to support, go here. If you believe that we showcase ideas that you want to support, go here, and gave their links. He named all the people they named, the critical theorists they named, and the ones that he's read, or the authorities he's read about critical race theory. Because remember, there are plenty of scholars who have studied critical race theory who just come away not being critical race theorists. There's a difference. I've profiled the reports from the expert witnesses in the Gabrielle Clark case against Democracy Prep. We have Eric Smith and we have Ilana Redstone. These are two people who have studied critical race theory in depth. They've read all of the same literature quoted by these two women. Yet they came away not agreeing with it. And in the expert testimony, they explain why. But you can, judge for yourself, watch it. But I do want you to picture your child, K through 12 child, any age, pick an age, doesn't really matter. First time they really encounter U.S. history is around 5th grade. Sometimes it's 4th grade, depends on the school. So picture your 9, 10, 11-year-old child sitting there where Will is sitting, hearing the things that he heard. And how much nicer could they possibly be? I mean, just because it's a kid. If your child's going to go into a classroom and be told this is the truth and you need to accept these premises, that's what We's told him. Before I'm going to participate in this conversation, because I got better things to do, basically is how she's, communicating. I have other things to do. So, if you're not going to accept these premises, then what is the point of my being here? This isn't going to be a conversation. Well, that's absurd. You can have conversations with people who don't accept your starting premises. I'm sure she didn't accept his starting premises, and he sat there and had a conversation with her. She didn't even ask what they were. She wasn't even remotely interested in what his values were, what his morals were, where he started. They did as it went down the line, but it was more of a challenge. Shivy was like, well, what do you believe? Now, don't talk to me about these books and this, what you've read. What do you believe? We want to know what's in your heart. But it didn't feel like they genuinely wanted to hear what he believed. It was more like, let's see if we can find the racism hiding in your heart. I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I could be wrong about that. They might have been sincere. It's possible. But it didn't sound sincere to me. It sounded more to me like they wanted to just put him on the spot in a permanent game of gotcha and force him into a position where he was going to say something that clearly disagreed with them to give Weeze an opportunity to exit stage left. I think she was itching to get out of there in a legit way. And by asking him what he really believed, I also think they were testing his core strength, testing how willing he was to stand up for his values and beliefs. But I also understand that he probably wanted to continue the conversation as long as possible to make sure he could really understand where they were coming from. It was more about understanding them than them understanding him, which is ironic because they kept talking about how it wasn't their responsibility either to understand him or to teach him about what that they believed, and yet they were teaching him with every utterance. They didn't have to give him a course. They just had to keep talking. They told him who they were. They told him what their values were, what their morals were, with every syllable. And I want you to imagine your child sitting where Will was sitting, being spoken to that way, asking a simple question like, well, but you guys changed the definition of racism. How can you do that? I mean, if you're going to change the definition of racism, then yeah, okay, I guess so, but it's not the definition I would use. Do you want your child to be talked over? Do you want them to be told they're wrong? So I want you to go watch it. I hope you'll tune in later for the live stream to see the reaction, but I want you to walk away with this one message from this video. There is no arguing with these people. You can engage people one time if you don't know where they're coming from on critical race theory, if you don't know what their views are. You can engage them one time. But when you get some of the responses that he got, if you get anything along the lines of, well, you would say that because you're white, or well, yeah, that just means you've had too much time with white people, you're white adjacent. You've been indoctrinated into whiteness so much for your safety. You're holding onto safety. So, until you're ready to come back over to give up that whiteness, bankrupt your whiteness, bankrupt your privilege, walk away from whiteness, then we can't have a conversation. If you get that kind of language, or we need to burn the Constitution, we need to tear down. At one point, Dr. Slater said we needed to tear down all the institutions of our country, down to the foundation. And Will expressed concern that teaching that to his students was going to be terrifying to them. And she actually said that she and he don't get to say that because they're white. Do you want your child to be told you don't get to be scared? You don't get to say that it's scary to contemplate an America without the institutions we now have, with nothing suggested to replace them, by the way. Just tear them down. Do you think it's not appropriate for your child to be scared, regardless of their skin color? Do you think it's not possible that a child of color would be scared to hear that? But she was told, we don't get to say that, Will. There was so much of permission taking and granting in this conversation based on skin color. It was nauseating. And that is what's happening in the classroom. Who's permitted to speak? Who's permitted to have an opinion? Whose opinions are going to be treated as valid and worthy of exploration or consideration is going to be based on gender and skin color, sexual orientation, those characteristics. They don't share your values if that bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, then they do. But if you consider yourself to be anti-woke or anti-critical race theory or anti these ideas, that's the core thing you need to understand. It doesn't matter what they call it. What's being taught in the classroom? What values are being taught? Because these folks are critical race theorists. They consider themselves actually be authorities above and beyond even Kendi. She said that you should throw Robin DiAngelo's book in the trash. She has a problem, I'm talking about, has a problem with critical race theory because she thinks it leaves too much room for Will and his discomfort. That's her complaint about critical race theory. And she and Dr. Slater didn't challenge her, didn't correct her. While at the same time saying that critical race theory, as she understands it, and like I said, never contradicted a single word that we said, that it's the perfect framework for K-12. So all you need to know is, do you agree with that? And if you don't, then you need to go in to your schools, to your school boards, et cetera, to your politicians, and you need to say, not a single dime of my tax money, not a single moment of my child's time should be taken up teaching them that this country is fundamentally white supremacist, that our founding documents need to be burned, that we need to tear down the institutions of our country, whether we know what we're replacing them with or not. We got to start over from scratch. Every conversation, every interaction is a power struggle. There is no truth but power. I don't want any of this coming into the classroom. None of this has any basis in fact. It is all a worldview and an ideology. And I would no more have you teach fundamentalist Christianity or Islam in the classroom than critical race theory. And I'm not saying don't go into a class of like 10th graders in history or critical thinking and refuse to have a conversation about critical race theory. In fact, it might actually be a fantastic thought exercise in what is and is not a theory versus a belief system. By all means, talk about it. But to teach it as fact, to teach it as this is our history is of people who wanted to create a country for the purpose of preserving slavery and oppression over Black people. And that it can't be undone, and we can't even begin to fight racism for real until we tear down the country. I mean, not for nothing, you're American public schools. And the lawmakers who empower you, chairmen of boards of education and superintendents and people like that, those elected officials, they swore an oath They swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So unless you're saying that you're perfectly okay with a semi-nonviolent, because there's violence inherent in taking the tax money to pay for this garbage. It's compulsory. There's violence inherent in forcing kids to go to these schools. It's compulsory. There's a or else at the end of it. Unless you're okay with a semi-nonviolent revolution to turn the United States into a Marxist country, a socialist country, a completely different country, an anti-capitalist country, because they also said that capitalism is all part of white supremacy, by the way. Did you know that? Do you want your children learning that? They said it. These experts. I didn't say it. They said it. Go watch in context. You'll hear. Anyway, that's all you need to know. So if you're inclined to be writing me emails saying, oh, thank you for your videos. You've given me the courage to speak up, with other adults and try to find out who agrees with me and who doesn't. And this person, responded and doesn't agree and so forth and so on. And they're basically saying some of the same things that these folks have said. That's the last conversation you need to be having with that person, unless you agree with them. You are not going to get any farther than Will got. You are talking to somebody whose morals, their entire moral code, their entire value structure is so fundamentally different from your own. You have no basis for conversation. You are, for all intents and purposes, in a kind of war with them. And right now it's a war for your child's mind and future. So I don't mean to be rude and dismissive. I want to help you as much as I can, but that's why I'm making this video, to tell you that don't waste your time. You should be focusing 100% of your time on protecting your child. That's it. That's your number one priority. Protect your child, protect their mind from this set of ideas. And I don't think you can change the school fast enough to do it. That's my opinion. Your mileage may vary, but you're not going to persuade these people. They want to meet on a playing field where power is the only truth. Well, you might need to use power to fight them. And by that, I mean, run for school board, start dominating these things, make it clear to politicians they're going to get the hell voted out of office. You're not giving a goddamn nickel to their campaigns. And you're going to work very hard to get rid of them and do everything you can to use what power you have, if you do get in charge of school boards and states and boards of education, to fire all of these teachers, to get rid of them and remove their ideas from public spaces that are paid for with your tax dollars. They want to go start their own private school to preach to kids about this nonsense. This is America. They have freedom of speech. They can do that. But they have no right to do it in a public school. Least of all, under the American damn flag. So that's what I wanted to bring to you today. Again, I'm sorry to be so harsh, and I don't mean to be dismissive when I say I can't help you formulate discrete arguments against these people, because that is a colossal waste of my time and yours. I'm not going to support you in hurting yourself. This is like the parent of a drug addict who says, help me formulate an argument to talk my child out of being a drug addict. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to help you to build up your strength so you stop enabling the kid, so you stop giving so much of yourself and so much of your time to this debate, to this argument. Is it wrong that they're addicted to drugs? Do you want them to continue to be addicted to drugs? No, you don't? Okay, that's it. That's all you need to know. Same here. Is this wrong what they're teaching? Do you want these ideas and these behaviors in the classroom, K-12? Even in the university? If you don't, that's all you need to know. All right, so if you like this video, comment, share, like, subscribe. That's the video. And it's exhausting, you guys. It really is exhausting. It is exhausting. So, thanks for watching.